Are there any other ways we are seeing retailers differentiating other than the staff knowledge factor?
There's no denying that when you have a large store like the Home Depot or like Lowe's, that does offer its advantages. So if you look at our key purchasing criteria, we do see that customers really do value the fundamentals. That's things like product variety, having enough of a product in stock, kind of the core competencies. And with conventional home improvement retailers, this tends to be somewhere they excel.
Hi, Craig. Good to see you. Excited to talk about home improvement DIY today.
Yeah, me too. Good to see you, Angie. Lots to talk about.
My name is Angie. I lead the US retail instrument for MPS Prism, and along with Craig, we're in the New York office. Craig, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working on home improvement with Angie for the past year or so, and also sit in the New York office.
Craig, as we know, home improvement is such an interesting space. We know that it was a major beneficiary of pandemic-related tailwinds. So the DIY popularity grew as homeowners, renters were unable to move home and had a lot of desire to improve their living space. And so did I. And I think you did too, Craig, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But now with the inflationary pressure, high interest rates preventing financings, supply chain pressures, home improvement space seems to be facing similar challenges that we're seeing across other retailers. However, retailers are continuing to focus a lot on DIY, and I think there's still a lot of demand here. And we do hear that CX is a growing component of how to win. How are we seeing these factors impact home improvement retailers' performance? Do we see any changes, Craig?
Yeah, I think since the pandemic, we've seen actually a continued strength amongst the home improvement retailers. So, if we look at customer sentiment towards these retailers, really the core providers, so brands like the Home Depot, Menards, but also specialists, places like Floor and Decor, they've still been stable in leading the industry. And that's been true throughout 2023. We do obviously have non-specialists in the space, so big box stores, the likes of Best Buy, Target, Walmart, and they do tend to lag. And that's been true, for the whole year of data that we have. One notable exception actually would be Amazon. So they've been gaining ground in 2023. They're actually on par right now with some of the major home improvement retailers we'd know. So actually some strength there from them.
That's super interesting. Interesting about Amazon, but also that traditional home improvement stores have held their leads here. What do you think contributes to that?
Yeah, they're really differentiating through their in-store experience here. And we do see that still a majority of the home improvement purchases, taking place in store. And this does shine through, I think, mostly in the perceptions of their staff. So employees from retailers like the Home Depot, maybe Ace, Menards, they are typically viewed as being more knowledgeable than those from those big box stores that we've talked about. Now, there are definitely areas where the big box stores do a bit better. So, for instance, one thing which is really important, I think we see this throughout retail, is being able to actually find someone in a store who can help you if you have a question. And we do see that some stores like Best Buy, Target, they do outperform the home improvement specialists here. But I think the key thing is, despite that, they're not really making up for the capability gap. They're maybe not as able to answer some of the questions customers might have about home improvement.
Got it. That's so interesting. So I do know that for retailers in general, when customers shop there, it is really important to be able to find staff pretty quickly. But it sounds like because of the knowledge and the expertise that the specialists of the home improvement players that bring in, that there is still a gap that remains across the board amongst the market. Got it. That makes sense, especially for DIY. Are there any other ways we are seeing retailers differentiating other than the staff knowledge factor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's no denying that when you have a large store like the Home Depot or like Lowe's, that does offer its advantages. So if you look at our key purchasing criteria, we do see that customers really do value the fundamentals. So that's things like product variety, having enough of a product in stock, kind of the core competencies. And with conventional home improvement retailers, this tends to be somewhere they excel. But you do have to complement this with omnichannel capabilities. So this is becoming something which we see very important. So when you have a large store, being able to support that through something like a website or an app, which can actually provide a bit more information, is key. So I think some of the things we're starting to see would be things like inventory tracking via online, so you can actually see what you need is in stock before you actually make the trip to a store. But also things like being able to locate where an item is in a shelf. If you go to these stores, they're so big, it can be a little bit of a maze, especially if you're not used to going there. Perhaps you only visit once or twice a year. So having the support of things like a strong mobile app can be really important for the overall experience. But I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, think just one of the things which we do see is you really do need to get this right. So it's one thing to have an app or a website that can support the experience, but if there's any discrepancies in the information you see, that can actually be really negative to the experience the customer has. So it goes from being something which pushes someone towards being a promoter towards actually being a detractor.
Right, Craig, I think that's so true. So, for example, if a customer goes in to get the specific SKU and you go there in store, you made the trip, and if it's not there, it's such a terrible experience for the
Absolutely.
customer.
Yeah.
So I can totally see that why that would be a detractor creating moment for the customer. And I agree that some of these stores are very large. So I think retailers can improve experience here through digital platforms. And I think having that seamless transition from like one platform to the other and making sure they're talking to each other, I think is really critical. Speaking of which, I know you earlier mentioned Amazon doing super well.
Yeah.
What are they getting right in terms of home improvement sector?
Yeah, you're right. Amazon is doing well. And it's interesting with Amazon because they don't necessarily offer the full range of products that somewhere like, say, Lowe's offers, or even actually someone like Costco tends to offer more in the home improvement space. But I think unsurprisingly, where we see them excel is those core competencies within e-commerce. So they are able to leverage the strengths they have there inherently from their platform, and I guess compensate actually for some of the product gaps that they might have.
I also think that because Amazon such a great does a great job making sure like the communication is really transparent, their delivery is pretty fast. So I'm sure that also plays into a factor of making sure they deliver similar experience when customers are buying maybe probably smaller quantity in item, but still you're having a pretty good experience when you're buying online.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but yeah, it's still super interesting because I don't necessarily associate Amazon with home improvement. But do you think they're really serving the same needs as someone like Home Depot or Lowe's?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Within Prism, we're tracking all types of purchases. So this is everything from things like a full-on kitchen and bath remodel, but we're also looking at things like, let's say, flooring or paint, as well as appliances, tools. So there's the full spectrum there that we're capturing. I think for Amazon specifically, we do see a lot of depth in categories like furnishings, decor, but also things like home fittings, tools, actually even things like appliances to some extent. So maybe they're not doing everything, but there's definitely a lot of overlap versus someone like the Home Depot. But I think what we do see is the ease of their experience. That's what really shines through in the data. So that's right the way through from, if you're initially just clicking around, thinking about what you might want, that initial research period, and then right the way through to, I don't know, maybe the kind of experiences which you don't want to have necessarily, but definitely happen. Things like canceling an order,
Mm.
returning an item. All of these are areas where they're excelling essentially.
That makes a lot of sense. I also wonder because when I shop online on Amazon, I also look through all the pictures and the
Yes.
reviews. And I imagine because so many customers are using Amazon, I wonder if there are just like more pictures and also reviews to inspire them, also just like learn from other people's experience.
It's so true because you see a depth of kind of user inputted information, things like how to use a product, things to watch out for, which I don't really think you can get anywhere else right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you see as the key focus areas for retailers looking to close gap to Amazon?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of ways we can look at this. So I think one of the most useful ones is to actually take it from an episode perspective. So, we break out the customer journey into these discrete portions, and we can look at where Amazon differentiates. So actually, if you're looking at their Net Promoter Score by episode, they do really well before the purchase actually happens. So that's things like checking availability, comparing items. That's a really simple process with Amazon. But they also do very well. And I think one of the key areas they differentiate is actually the order management process. So that could be things like modifying an order, canceling an order, or even things like getting a refund. And this is something which, I think we've seen across retail can be a bit of a pain point. I think one area actually which is very interesting where they do well is within issue resolution. So this is really important because we see it as being one of the most emotive episodes. So it really impacts your experience overall. So if it goes well, if you have an issue and you are able to resolve it successfully, you're probably going to become a promoter for the brand. But when you don't get it right, it's really divisive. It can really take away from your overall experience. So it's a really important area. And this is somewhere where Amazon is really doing quite well. So I think what they show is even when you have potentially a negative experience, having to resolve an issue, it doesn't actually have to be a negative overall. Yeah, I think with Amazon, what we see is broadly they're facing the same types of issues as other retailers. Things definitely still go wrong when you're shopping with Amazon. Things get broken, maybe you have a delay, wrong item gets shipped, those kind of things. Ultimately, though, what shines through is that it's a little bit easier to deal with it if you're shopping with Amazon. So the way this then translates in our data is we do ultimately see more successful resolutions with Amazon shoppers versus the industry.
That's so interesting. I think personally for me, when I used to try to reach out to Amazon customer experience folks, it was really hard, even a couple years back. But I do see that they made a lot of investment into like the chat, as you mentioned, Craig. So it's so much easier to just like get connected, get a resolution, and they do a really good job trying to make it a first time resolution.
Yes.
And try to do it a speedy resolution. So I can totally see why Amazon is able to leverage their advantage in an industry as specialized as home improvement, but they're doing super well. Do you know, Craig, if we're seeing pros using Amazon as well, or are they still more invested towards like traditional players?
Currently with Prism, we're actually only looking at these DIY consumers, but we are actively looking at expanding towards pro customers. So I think that's something which we will be able to look at within maybe the next year or so.
Awesome. Maybe we can talk about it next time.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you so much for your time, Craig. That was super interesting. I really appreciated you giving us insights about Amazon and how important it is to have like a seamless omni-channel experience and also having a prompt online shopping experience as well, even for home improvement. So,
especially for home improvement. Thanks, Angie.
Yes. Thank you.